Good morning and welcome to the National Gallery of Victoria. I begin by acknowledging that we meet on the unceded lands of the Kulin people of Naarm, which we now know as Melbourne. I am on the lands of the Wurundjeri people and pay my respects to them and their elders. If you are joining us remotely today, I would also like to acknowledge that many people present in today's talk may be on the lands of other traditional custodians and pay respect to those communities wherever they are as well. My name's Paola Di Trocchio and I'm one of the fashion and textiles curators here at the National Gallery of Victoria. And I'd like to spend a few moments sharing an introduction about the exhibition that we have here today, Gabrielle Chanel Fashion Manifesto. The exhibition includes many of the highlights of Gabrielle Chanel's wonderful and extensive career, as well as many of the aspects of the template of the modern wardrobe. So things we wear today, things such as the little black dress and the women's suit, owe their heritage to Gabrielle Chanel. She was born in 1883 and she wasn't born in the best circumstances. She had a fairly poor rural upbringing and her parents died when she was very young, so she was raised in an orphanage by nuns. But the skill that the nuns gave her was the incredible skill of sewing. And she used that throughout her life to transform her life and also in lots of ways to transform the modern wardrobe. So she actually began as a milliner. So in the exhibition, you'll see the first work that you'll see is a hat, and that is in honour and in tribute to the fact that she was a milliner initially. And then she opened a clothing boutique. So she opened a clothing boutique as early as 1913, and by 1919 she had several, some along the coasts, in Deauville and in Biarritz, and also her signature store, which still stands today, in Rue Cambon in Paris. So this was against the backdrop of the First World War, so many things were changing in society and the meanings of clothing were changing in society too. And the role of women was changing in society, and she took that on in a very personal way and also in a very sort of public way. So personally, she started to wear some of her boyfriend's clothing. So she actually experienced what it was to wear men's clothing, which was very, very unconventional at the time. It was an era when women were largely still wearing corsets. She wasn't the only one to sort of, I guess, free women from the corset. Other designers were also experimenting in this space, but she was very adamant in her radical design around the female figure. So she continued to use motifs of women's wear, so still dresses, but she also looked at menswear suiting as a way of reinventing the female wardrobe in the early 20th century. So some of those innovations are seen in the first room of the exhibition, and that's called the emergence of a style. This is where we see soft tweed jackets along with skirts in the form of suits. And then we move on to the next section where you start to see one of the pieces that she's most famous for, which is the little black dress. And this is a silhouette that is still associated with her today. In 1926, US Vogue calls her dress the Chanel Ford. So they're referring to an icon of modernity. And the Ford is something that is created in a brand new way. It's created on the industrial line in order to create it in multiples and to make it available extensively to people across different worlds. And the little black dress becomes the same sort of garment, something that is available to all. Now, not everybody could afford a Chanel little black dress. She was a haute couturier. She used very refined techniques, but she combined the sophistication and the refinement of those techniques with everyday fabrics. And in so many ways, that was incredibly innovative. So she used soft jerseys, which up until then had only really been used for underwear. She used them for outerwear in order to take advantage of that characteristic of the cloth, that softness, but it was tailored to perfection. Likewise with the little black dress, she used a colour and a fabric that had previously been associated with the professions, with service. Maids wore black, shop girls wore black, professional lawyers wore black. But she transformed the meaning of the colour into something that could be sophisticated and wearable for the modern woman. The figure of the garçon had emerged, and this was a woman who lived as freely as a man, and she embraced that prototype, and in a lot of ways came to embody that prototype. So she herself was never entirely free of men, but she never got married. She remained single her whole life, and she remained completely independent. And she was very assured in making her own decisions about the trajectory of her life and her career. She takes on a much more romantic aesthetic in the 1930s, but still within that aesthetic we see the characteristics of her design, which is simplicity, ease, comfort and practicality. Again, notions that had been associated with menswear previously, but not necessarily with women's wear. And in those designs, while you see quite romantic silhouettes, you see the use of lace, billowing skirts, there's still a very restrained elegance to it all. Each of those frills is not over the top, it's a restrained frill. And her tailoring and her seaming is quite geometric and quite, if from a dressmaking perspective, quite unconventional and also quite challenging. It would be very challenging to make those silhouettes, especially those sharp, jagged lines across those soft 1930s dresses. So that's where we see this appropriation or this acknowledgement of her very streamlined designs from the 1920s translated into the 1930s. She closes her house in 1939 when the Second World War breaks out, and she like many designers at the time, stops designing, but her perfume continues to sell. In 1953, when she is surrounded by a brand new silhouette that we've come to know as the new look, with cinched waists and billowing skirts and padded shoulders, something that she sees as constricting for women. In 1953, at age 70, she decides to reopen her house. And what she wants to do is she wants to maintain her design philosophy for the next generation of women. So she wants, again, to create clothes that are practical, with ease, with comfort, and with practicality. So she launches the Chanel suit, and this is a reinvention of her 1920s suit, adapted to the era that she's in. And this is where we see the short, boxy Chanel jacket come into fruition, the knee-length skirt, and its very restrained details, which are both a combination of function and decoration. So the buttons, which are a functional aspect of most jackets, become like jewels decorating the front of the jacket. And they take on a very personal representation of the woman. So you see buttons in the shape of lion's heads, which is her star sign, Leo. And you also see buttons with glimmers and hints of gold in order to add that jewel-like accent. At the same time, from the 1920s and 30s, she has also adopted the practice of wearing quite bold jewellery. So we have a lot of those wonderful pieces in the exhibition. The exhibition ends in the 50s and 60s with actually the very last piece that she designed in 1971. And what we see in that last room is almost like a recount or a revision of her aesthetic translated again into new decades. And what we see consistently is a focus on practicality, ease, elegance, and even if she does add shimmer and glimmer, she'll add it to the surface of the fabric in a single colour, so that there is still that uniformity from shoulder to hem. Ending with the last piece that she designed in 1971 when she died. She worked to the very last minute designing that last collection, which we have the pleasure of presenting. So I hope you'll enjoy the exhibition and therefore a journey through Gabrielle Chanel's life and career. Thank you.